Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a journey unlike any other. Today we step back in time to the golden age of England, an era of dazzling culture, fierce rivalries, and a playwright whose words would echo across centuries. This is the story of Shakespeare and Elizabethan England, a time when the world was changing, when the stage became a mirror of human passion, and when one man captured the very soul of his age. As we open the doors to this vibrant past, you will walk the crowded streets of London, hear the cries of the market, feel the thunder of applause in the Globe Theatre, and witness the struggles and triumphs of the greatest literary mind the world has ever known. But beyond the brilliance of William Shakespeare lies the age that shaped him, an England ruled by the formidable Queen Elizabeth I, alive with discovery, conflict, and artistry. So take your seat, open your imagination, and let the curtain rise. For this is not just history, it is theatre, life, and poetry. Welcome, dear audience, to Shakespeare's world. The year is Echen Wubite Wushabad. A cloud of uncertainty hangs over England. The nation has endured years of religious turmoil, political instability, and fear of foreign powers. Yet on this very stage, history prepares to crown its leading actress, Elizabeth Tudor, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. As the crown is placed upon the young queen's head, the fate of a kingdom transforms. Elizabeth inherits a nation fractured by faith and weakened by war. Yet within her reign, England will rise to a power of art, discovery, and theatre. This is the dawn of the Elizabethan Golden Age. We open with the streets of London, narrow, bustling, alive with merchants, beggars, scholars, and nobles alike. The air smells of roasted meats, the Thames teems with ships, and the sound of bells echoes from St. Paul's Cathedral. England is a land of contrasts, grandeur and poverty, violence and beauty. At court, Elizabeth emerges as a monarch unlike any before her, educated, eloquent, and determined to rule in her own right. Her presence commands loyalty. Her words inspire awe. "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman," she would one day declare, "but I have the heart and stomach of a king." Under her reign, England begins to flourish. Explorers set sail across uncharted seas. Poets pen verses that stir hearts, and actors transform wooden stages into portals of imagination. The Golden Age is not merely about wealth or conquest. It is about identity, creativity, and the birth of a new England. The people, though still facing hardship, sense a turning tide. A sense of pride grows with each naval victory, each play performed, each poem recited in a candlelit hall. And in a small town called Stratford-upon-Avon, a boy named William Shakespeare is just 4 years old. His life, yet unnoticed, will one day become the crown jewel of this age. This is the beginning, a kingdom reborn, an age of brilliance, and the stage upon which Shakespeare will one day rise, ascends the throne with a mixture of triumph and uncertainty. Born the daughter of Anne Boleyn, executed for treason, and Henry VIII, whose marriages reshaped the very Church of England, Elizabeth has carried the shadow of scandal her entire life. Now, with the crown upon her head, she must prove herself not as a pawn, but as a ruler. Elizabeth's reign begins with questions. Can a woman command the loyalty of men? Can she keep her kingdom united? After years of religious strife, can she resist foreign powers that see England as vulnerable? Against all odds, Elizabeth rises to the challenge. Choosing never to marry, she declares herself wedded to her people. This choice earns her the title the Virgin Queen, a symbol of independence and unyielding devotion to her country. But this decision also comes with constant pressure. Suitors from across Europe attempt to win her hand. Spain, France, and even her own courtiers. Yet Elizabeth understands to marry would risk her throne, her freedom, and the delicate balance of power she commands. At court, she surrounds herself with brilliant minds. William Cecil, her trusted advisor, Francis Walsingham, her spy master, and Robert Dudley, the man who perhaps captured her heart, but never her crown. These figures shape her reign, yet Elizabeth always ensures her power remains her own. Trach. The Queen masters the art of image. Her portraits show her as timeless, almost divine, draped in jewels and painted with youthful beauty. Long after her youth had passed, she becomes a living symbol, half woman, half legend, inspiring awe and loyalty. But Elizabeth's life is not without danger. Catholic plots threaten her, assassins lurk in shadows, and foreign monarchs like Philip II of Spain seek her downfall. Still, her sharp mind and fierce will turn enemies into symbols of her strength. She becomes not just a queen, but an icon of survival. Elizabeth transforms England. Under her, the nation stands firm against foreign invasion, prospers through exploration, and flourishes in art and theatre. She is both a woman and a myth. And through her reign, the world will remember the Elizabethan age as a golden era. And within this golden light, a young playwright named William Shakespeare will soon find the stage set for his own immortal legacy. London in the late Echen Wubites is a city of contradictions, a place of opportunity and danger, beauty and filth, splendor and shadow. To step into Elizabethan London is to enter a world alive with sound, scent, and spectacle. The cobbled streets overflow with merchants hawking wares, the laughter of children, the cries of beggars, and the clang of blacksmiths at work. The River Thames, wide and muddy, carries ships from faraway lands, their sails heavy with spices, silk, and secrets. The city is booming. Its population swells to nearly Ling, making it one of Europe's largest capitals. Trade fuels prosperity, and with prosperity comes ambition. Nobles ride in gilded carriages, while commoners push through crowded markets. St. Paul's Cathedral towers over the skyline, a beacon of both faith and civic pride. Yet just a few steps away, squalor reigns. Open sewers line the streets, diseases spread quickly, and thieves lurk in every alley. Yet London is not only a place of hardship, it is also a city of wonder, where knowledge spreads rapidly through printed books, where travelers bring tales of the new world, and where music, poetry, and theatre ignite the imagination of rich and poor alike. This is the London Shakespeare enters as a young man, a city brimming with stories, alive with voices, both magnificent and grim. A city that will become the stage upon which his genius transforms the world. Shakespeare's youth is marked by a hunger for knowledge and the vivid influences of the Elizabethan world. The King's New School in Stratford is more than just a classroom. It is a gateway to the past and a foundation for the future. Here, William studies Latin grammar with precision, memorizing passages from Ovid's Metamorphoses, learning the histories of Rome, and practicing the art of rhetoric. These lessons instill not only language, but also an understanding of human ambition, folly, and desire. Beyond the classroom, the world itself is a living textbook. Festivals fill the streets with music, plays, and pageantry. Traveling players bring stories of kings and clowns, saints and sinners. Folklore and superstitions cling to village life. Tales of fairies, witches, and spirits whispered by firelight. These become seeds of imagination that will later bloom on stage. The boy is also shaped by nature. The rolling fields, the whisper of the Avon River, the cries of birds, all engrave themselves upon his memory. His later works will overflow with the imagery of the countryside, Flowers in bloom, storms raging, the beauty and cruelty of the natural world. As he matures, William develops an ear for speech. He listens to merchants bargaining, farmers cursing the weather, nobles boasting at fairs. He learns that words are power. They can charm, wound, or inspire. This awareness becomes the foundation of his artistry. Education and experience combine to shape Shakespeare into more than just a scholar. They shape him into a poet. By the time he leaves his youth behind, he carries within him a treasury of stories, images, and rhythms ready to be set free. Beneath the glittering image of Elizabethan England lies the reality of the common people, the backbone of the kingdom, and yet often it's most overlooked. For every nobleman in Saturn, there are hundreds of men and women laboring in fields, workshops, and taverns, keeping the nation alive. Daily life is hard. Most families live in one-room cottages with dirt floors, sharing space with livestock for warmth. Meals consist largely of bread, pottage, and ale, with meat reserved for feast days. The seasons dictate survival. A poor harvest can bring hunger while disease sweeps quickly through crowded villages and city streets. Children are expected to work as soon as they can. Boys become apprentices to craftsmen, while girls often help at home or in markets. Few receive formal education, though the spread of grammar schools is slowly changing. That entertainment is simple but cherished. Fairs, festivals, and the occasional theatre performance are escapes from the grind of survival. Religion shapes their lives deeply. Sunday sermons bind communities together, and holy days offer rare chances for joy. Yet the shifting tides between Protestant and Catholic rule have left scars of fear and division. Still, the people endure, adapting to the faith decreed from above while keeping their own traditions alive. The struggles of common folk echo in Shakespeare's plays. The gravediggers in Hamlet, the rustics in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the tavern-goers in Henry IV. These characters are not grand, yet they speak truths that resonate across centuries. For while the nobles debate politics, it is the common people who form the heartbeat of Elizabethan England. Their laughter, their pain, their endurance, all feed the imagination of the young playwright who will give them voices on stage. Beyond survival, Elizabethan England pulses with a new force, the spirit of the Renaissance. Born in Italy and carried across Europe, this wave of humanism, art, and discovery transforms the way England sees itself and its place in the world. The Renaissance teaches that knowledge is power, that man is capable of greatness, and that beauty lies in both reason and imagination. In Elizabeth's England, this spirit flourishes. Printing presses spread books like wildfire. From the Bible to works of science and philosophy, grammar schools teach Latin, rhetoric, and logic, planting seeds of learning, even among the sons of commoners. At universities such as Oxford and Cambridge, students debate classical texts, rediscovering Aristotle, Plato, and Cicero. Humanist thinkers argue that education should shape not just the mind, but the moral character of a person. It is an age of ideas as much as action. Art and music thrive. Madrigals fill the air in noble halls. Painters capture regal portraits, and poets like Edmund Spenser craft epics that rival those of ancient Rome. Science begins to stir, too. New theories of astronomy and medicine challenge old beliefs, sparking curiosity and controversy. This spirit of inquiry and creativity sets the stage for Shakespeare. His plays are filled with Renaissance ideals, the complexity of man, the blending of reason and emotion, the grandeur of history, and the boundless possibilities of imagination. "What a piece of work is man!" cried Hamlet, words that echo the Renaissance vision of human potential. Yet the Renaissance is not confined to scholars or kings. Its influence trickles into the lives of ordinary people. In the pamphlets they read, the songs they sing, and the stories they hear performed on stage. England, once torn by division, now embraces the idea that it is part of a larger, vibrant world. The Renaissance spirit is the fire that fuels the Elizabethan age, and in its glow, Shakespeare's genius will find a home in April of Echen Ubite Lucesus. In the quiet market town of Stratford-upon-Avon, a child is born who will one day reshape the world of literature. William Shakespeare. His father, John Shakespeare, is a respected glover and alderman, and his mother, Mary Arden, descends from a long-established farming family. Their modest home, with its timbered beams and hearth fire, becomes the cradle of genius. Stratford itself is a town of both charm and bustle. Farmers bring their produce to market, tradesmen sell their wares, and the River Avon winds gracefully through the landscape. Farms and sickets, festivals brighten the seasons, and church bells mark the rhythm of daily life. In this close-knit world, young William grows, surrounded by the sights, sounds, and stories that will later find their way into his plays. He attends the King's New School, where Latin grammar, rhetoric, and classical texts are drilled into eager minds. Here he first encounters Ovid, Seneca, and Virgil, authors whose influence will echo through his works, though no record of his schooling survive. The richness of his later writing speaks to a boy who drank deeply from the well of knowledge. At home, William witnesses the challenges of provincial life. His father's fortunes rise and fall, exposing him to the fragility of status. From his mother's tales of the countryside, he learns of tradition and folklore. These early impressions weave together, blending the grandeur of classical learning with the earthy realism of village life. Little could Stratford imagine that this boy, playing in its meadows and wandering its lanes, would one day carry its name into immortality. Shakespeare's youth is marked by a hunger for knowledge and the vivid influences of the Elizabethan world. The King's New School in Stratford is more than just a classroom. It is a gateway to the past and a foundation for the future. Here, William studies Latin grammar with precision, memorizing passages from Ovid's Metamorphoses, learning the histories of Rome, and practicing the art of rhetoric. These lessons instill not only language, but also an understanding of human ambition, folly, and desire. Beyond the classroom, the world itself is a living textbook. Festivals fill the streets with music, plays, and pageantry. Traveling players bring stories of kings and clowns, saints and sinners. Folklore and superstitions cling to village life. Tales of fairies, witches, and spirits whispered by firelight. These become seeds of imagination that will later bloom on stage. The boy is also shaped by nature. The rolling fields, the whisper of the Avon River, the cries of birds, all engrave themselves upon his memory. His later works will overflow with the imagery of the countryside. Flowers in bloom, storms raging, the beauty and cruelty of the natural world. As he matures, William develops an ear for speech. He listens to merchants bargaining, farmers cursing the weather, nobles boasting at fairs. He learns that words are power. They can charm, wound, or inspire. This awareness becomes the foundation of his artistry. Education and experience combine to shape Shakespeare into more than just a scholar. They shape him into a poet. By the time he leaves his youth behind, he carries within him a treasury of stories, images, and rhythms ready to be set free by the late Echen Ubite. William Shakespeare is no longer the boy of Stratford, but a young man stepping into adulthood. Life brings him swiftly. At just 2 years old, he marries Anne Hathaway, a woman 8 years his senior, from a family farm in nearby Shottery. Their union, hurried and somewhat mysterious, takes place in Berkshire, when Anne is already expecting their first child. The couple soon welcomes a daughter, Susanna, followed by twins Hamnet and Judith in Patriotism. Their modest home grows lively, but the burdens of providing for a family weigh heavily on young William. Work in Stratford is limited, and the need for income pushes him toward uncertain opportunities. Life in rural Warwickshire is steady but confining, as William tends to his growing family. He watches neighbours labour in fields, townsmen argue over trade, and church leaders deliver fiery sermons. Yet within him stirs a restless ambition. He is drawn not only to words, but also to the stage. Stories performed by travelling players still echo in his imagination, urging him to seek a larger world. His marriage to Anne is marked by practicality more than passion. Anne, grounded and capable, manages household affairs while William's mind drifts toward poetry and performance. The bond between them is real, though complicated, a mixture of duty, affection, and unspoken distance. In these years, William learns what it means to shoulder responsibility, to endure limitations, and to dream of more. His plays will later echo with husbands and wives bound by both love and obligation, by passion and betrayal. From these early years of marriage and fatherhood, Shakespeare gains not only experience, but empathy for the struggles of ordinary families. After Berkshire, Shakespeare disappears from the historical record for nearly 7 years, a mysterious period known as the Lost Years. Historians can only speculate about where he went and what he did. Did he remain in Stratford, working as a teacher or law clerk? Did he travel the countryside with acting troupes, learning the rhythms of performance firsthand? Or did he journey to London preparing for the life that would make him immortal? These years invite legend. Some claim he poached deer on a nobleman's land and fled Stratford to avoid prosecution. Others imagine him roaming taverns, absorbing the speech of sailors, merchants, and rogues. Perhaps he served as a tutor for wealthy families, or found himself entangled in the politics of religion and court. What is certain is that when he reappears in London in the early courses, he carries with him a voice unlike any other. Somewhere in these hidden years, Shakespeare gathered experiences that sharpened his understanding of human nature. His plays reveal a keen ear for dialects, an intimate knowledge of the law, and an awareness of the passions and struggles of all classes of society. The Lost Years remind us that greatness is often forged in mystery, though the details remain hidden. This time in Shakespeare's life marks the transformation from provincial youth to aspiring playwright. In Stratford, Anne tends to the children alone, watching William vanish into silence, his whereabouts uncertain. The weight of absence defines these years for his family, while for William, it is a time of preparation, the invisible prelude to his rise. The early Berkshire, London bustles with life, and into its crowded streets steps William Shakespeare. He has left behind Stratford, his wife and children, entering a world teeming with opportunity, danger, and wonder. For a provincial man, the city is overwhelming. Carriages clatter over cobblestones, merchants cry their wares, and theatres beckon with their promise of applause. At first, William is unknown, one of many hopefuls seeking fortune in the capital. He may have begun by working as a servitor for a theatre troupe, carrying props, tending costumes, and learning the rhythms of performance from behind the curtain. His keen eye and sharper ear absorb every detail. London at this time is a city of both brilliance and peril. Plague outbreaks close the theatres for long stretches, leaving actors and playwrights desperate for work. Street brawls, crime, and political unrest simmer beneath the surface. Yet for Shakespeare, this dangerous city is also a stage, alive with stories. He hears the voices of sailors fresh from voyages, nobles swaggering in velvet, and roguers plotting in shadowy taverns. Each voice becomes fuel for his pen. The printing presses churn, and William seizes his chance. He publishes 2 long narrative poems, Venus and Adonis, Echen Wubite Josesan, and The Rape of Lucrece. Echen Wubite Josesus, works that win him noble patronage and a foothold among London's literary elite. Though not yet the celebrated playwright we know today, Shakespeare is beginning to carve out his place in the city's cultural world. His arrival in London marks the first step in a journey that will transform not only his life, but the entire course of English drama. By the mid-18th course, Shakespeare begins to step out of the shadows and into the limelight of the London stage. The city's playhouses, the theatre, the curtain, and later the rose, are magnets for audiences of every class. Here, William finds not only employment but a calling. His earliest plays, such as Henry VI in 3 parts, bring him recognition. Audiences thrill to the spectacle of battles, power struggles, and stirring speeches. Though rough compared to his later works, these plays mark the beginning of a voice that will grow more daring and profound. Rival playwrights take notice, some scoffing at the upstart crow who dares to challenge their dominance. Yet, William perseveres. The stage itself is a place of wonder. Groundlings pay a penny to stand, shouting and laughing, while nobles sit in covered boxes. Musicians tune their lutes, stagehands carry props, and actors declaim lines to roaring applause. Shakespeare, both writer and occasional actor, feels the electric pulse of theatre. The company of actors becomes his second family, men like Richard Burbage, destined to embody Hamlet, Othello, and King Lear. Together, they share triumphs and hardships, performing in packed houses one week and empty benches the next. But the stage is not only a place of entertainment, it is a mirror of the times. London in the Echen Wubite Joses is restless, scarred by plague, political intrigue, and fears of rebellion. Shakespeare's plays, filled with kings, battles, and betrayals, strike a chord with audiences living in an uncertain world. This period is the forge of his career. From anonymous beginnings, Shakespeare emerges as a rising playwright, his words echoing through the timbered rafters of London's playhouses. The Echen Wubite Joses are turbulent years for London. Plague strikes repeatedly, forcing the closure of theatres. For many actors and playwrights, this means ruin. But for William Shakespeare, it becomes an unexpected opportunity. With the stage darkened, he turns his attention to poetry. His first published work, Venus and Adonis, Echen Wubite Josesan, is a daring and sensual narrative poem dedicated to the young Earl of Southampton, Henry Wriothesley. It dazzles with wit, beauty, and a frankness that shocks and delights readers. The poem sells well and establishes Shakespeare's reputation as a poet of striking originality. Soon after, he follows with The Rape of Lucrece, Echen Wubite Josesus, another work dedicated to the Earl, cementing his ties with noble patronage. These poems, rich with classical imagery and bold passion, win him admiration from London's literary elite. Though some rivals sneer, others recognize a fresh, potent voice in English letters. These years prove that his talent is not bound only to the theatre. His pen has the power to stir readers as well as audiences. Meanwhile, Shakespeare begins composing the sonnets, a sequence of Ebat Wushasu poems that will later be recognized as some of the finest love poetry ever written. They explore themes of beauty, time, desire, betrayal, and the immortality of art. Their addresses remain mysterious. A fair youth, a dark lady, a youth, and a rival poet, sparking centuries of speculation about Shakespeare's private life. Though published only years later, the sonnets of the Ichenwubike Koses reflect Shakespeare's inner world, his longings, his fears, and his brilliance with language. In them, we glimpse not just a dramatist, but a man wrestling with love, art, and mortality. As theatres reopen, Shakespeare is no longer an unknown provincial. He has become a poet of reputation, standing on the threshold of greatness, with Venus and Adonis and the rape of Lucrece circulating. Shakespeare gains the attention of powerful patrons, particularly Henry Wriothesley, Earl of Southampton. Patronage is more than financial support. It is a lifeline for poets and playwrights. Seeking survival in a competitive and often cutthroat world, under Southampton's wing, Shakespeare enjoys protection, visibility, and status. Yet fame brings rivalry. Playwrights, like Robert Greene, sneer at him, calling him an upstart crow, a provincial actor who dares to challenge Oxford-educated men. Greene's famous pamphlet lashes out, mocking Shakespeare as someone who adorns himself with the feathers of others. Such attacks sting, but they also highlight Shakespeare's rapid ascent. Despite detractors, Shakespeare's friendships and alliances deepen. Southampton's favour elevates him, and in turn, Shakespeare pours admiration and devotion into dedications, and possibly even into some of the sonnets. Their relationship, whether purely patronage or something more intimate, remains one of history's great mysteries. Meanwhile, rivalries fuel his fire. The theatrical world of London is a constant competition. Troupes vying for audiences, writers battling for recognition, actors striving for leading roles. Shakespeare's skill, however, lies in transforming rivalry into art. His plays begin to show sharper wit, richer poetry, and characters who embody envy, ambition, and betrayal. By the mid-Ichenwubek Koses, William Shakespeare is no longer a hopeful newcomer. He is a poet with noble connections, a playwright with growing recognition, and a man whose words are beginning to echo beyond the taverns and playhouses into the halls of power. Patronage and rivalry together shape his resolve, sharpening his talent into a weapon that will carve his name into history. In the mid-Ichenwubek Koses, Shakespeare embraces the grandeur of England's past. His Henry VI trilogy draws large audiences, but it is Richard III that cements his reputation as a master of historical drama. Audiences gasp as Richard, the deformed yet brilliant schemer, claws his way to the throne, pleading himself, determined to prove a villain. These plays are more than entertainment. They are mirrors of power. In an age when questions of succession haunt Elizabeth's court, Shakespeare's depictions of ambition, betrayal, and legitimacy strike deep chords. The battles of York and Lancaster are not distant history, but allegories for the anxieties of his own day. At the heart of his history, plays are vivid characters. His kings are not just rulers, but men of flesh and weakness. Henry VI, timid and pious, crumbles before political storms. Richard III manipulates and murders with chilling brilliance. These portraits captivate both commoners and nobles alike. His mastery is not only in politics but in poetry. Shakespeare blends stirring speeches with intimate moments, making his history plays both epic and personal. Soldiers march on stage, trumpets sound, and battle scenes erupt before packed houses. The theatre becomes a place where England's past lives again. The popularity of these plays ensures Shakespeare's place in London's theatre world. He is no longer just a poet with noble patrons, but a dramatist shaping national memory. The stage Once uncertain ground has become his kingdom. While his history plays draw acclaim, Shakespeare also begins crafting comedies that charm audiences with wit, romance, and laughter. Works like The Two Gentlemen of Verona and A Comedy of Errors showcase his growing skill in blending humor with humanity. But it is A Midsummer Night's Dream, Iten Wubite Josawu to Josaluk, that marks a triumph. Written perhaps for a noble wedding, the play enchants with magic, mischief, and love. Fairies dance in moonlit forests. Young lovers chase one another in confusion, and the bumbling rude mechanicals rehearse their ridiculous play within a play. Audiences delight in the mix of poetry, comedy, and fantasy. These comedies reveal Shakespeare's versatility. He is not confined to politics and kings, but can spin tales of romance, mistaken identity, and reconciliation. He understands that laughter, like tragedy, speaks to universal truths. Behind the humor lie reflections on desire, folly, and the fragile line between illusion and reality. His plays attract patrons from all ranks of society. Nobles enjoy the wit and elegance. Commoners revel in the slapstick and clever wordplay. Shakespeare's genius lies in his ability to appeal to everyone, from the Queen herself to the humblest groundling. With these first comedies, Shakespeare proves himself more than a chronicler of England's past. He is a dramatist of imagination, joy, and wonder. Each play expands his reputation, setting the stage for the masterpieces yet to come. By the late Iten Wubek Joses, Shakespeare has proven himself a master of history and comedy. But now, his ambition takes a new turn. Tragedy. His first great tragic works begin to show the depth of his understanding of human passion and destruction. Titus Andronicus, c. Iten Wubite Josesus is his earliest tragedy, a shocking tale of revenge, violence, and bloodshed. Audiences both shudder and marvel at its extremity, though later critics dismiss it as crude. In its day, it electrifies theatergoers with its raw intensity. Soon after comes Romeo and Juliet, Iten Wubite Josawu to Josaluk, a play that transforms the genre. Here, tragedy is not only about blood and vengeance, but about love, fate, and youth. The story of star-crossed lovers captures audiences in a way no English play had before. Shakespeare's poetry soars as he gives voice to passion, tenderness, and despair. Balcony scenes, duels in the street, secret marriages, and desperate deaths play out with heartbreaking beauty. With Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare shows that tragedy is not confined to kings and generals. It rolls. Even ordinary youths can embody the grandeur of human emotion. He democratizes tragedy, giving every heart the capacity for epic sorrow. These early tragedies mark Shakespeare's shift into emotional depth. They reveal a playwright willing to probe the darkest corners of love, revenge, and fate. Audiences weep, cheer, and return again and again. Shakespeare, once the upstart crow, is becoming England's foremost dramatist. Even as he explores tragedy, Shakespeare continues to experiment with plays that defy easy categorization. The Merchant of Venice. c. Iten Wubite Joshalu to Joshiti emerges as one of his most complex works, part comedy, part tragedy, part courtroom drama. The play introduces Shylock, a Jewish moneylender whose demand for a pound of flesh makes him one of Shakespeare's most unforgettable characters. Shylock is both villain and victim, mocked and abused by Christians, yet relentless in his pursuit of justice. Audiences are torn, some laugh, some recoil, some feel sympathy. In this ambiguity lies Shakespeare's genius. At the same time, the play offers romance and humor. Portia, one of Shakespeare's greatest heroines, disguises herself as a lawyer to outwit Shylock and save Antonio. Her wit, intelligence, and courage captivate audiences, balancing the darker currents of the story. The Merchant of Venice shows Shakespeare's increasing ability to weave multiple tones, comedy, romance, and near tragedy, into one play. It reflects Elizabethan society's prejudices while also challenging them, asking audiences to question mercy, justice, and the value of human life. Beyond Merchant, Shakespeare continues to refine his craft in plays like Much Ado, About Nothing, and The Merry Wives of Windsor. His comedies sparkle with wit, but beneath them lurks a deeper understanding of human frailty. By the late Etienne Wubach Chaucer's, Shakespeare is not simply successful. He is essential to London theatre, a dramatist whose works dominate the stage and stir the minds of all who see them. The closing years of the Etienne Wubach Chaucer's bring Shakespeare to new heights of creativity, with Henry IV, part E.C. and part R.C. Etienne Wubach Chaucer to Chaucer. He crafts plays that go beyond chronicles of kings. These dramas intertwine politics, rebellion, and family, while giving the stage one of its most unforgettable characters, Sir John Falstaff. At the centre is Prince Hal, the wayward heir to the throne. Instead of preparing for kingship, he spends his time in taverns, drinking and jesting with rogues. His companion, Falstaff, is fat, witty, cowardly, and endlessly entertaining. Their comic escapades in the Boar's Head Tavern provide laughter, even as rebellion brews across England. Yet beneath the humour lies a deeper story. Prince Hal struggles between duty and pleasure, rebellion and loyalty, his father's stern expectations, and his own youthful impulses. As war looms, Hal transforms, leaving behind Falstaff's world of jest to embrace the crown. Audiences marvel at the balance of tones. They roar with laughter at Falstaff's lies and cowardice, then grow solemn as Hal redeems himself on the battlefield. Shakespeare captures both the folly of youth and the burden of kingship, weaving comedy and seriousness into a single tapestry. Henry IV shows Shakespeare's growing mastery. It is history, comedy, and tragedy at once, a portrait of England, of power, and of the fragile line between laughter and sorrow. By Etienne Wubach Chaucer. Shakespeare delivers one of his most stirring works, Henry V. Here, the once wayward Prince Hal becomes a warrior king, leading England to victory at Agincourt. The play is both patriotic celebration and subtle meditation on leadership, war, and honor. At its heart is the transformation of Hal into Henry. Now crowned, he must prove himself worthy of the crown. In the stirring once more unto the breech speech, he rallies his soldiers with fiery words, urging them to attack courageously. At Agincourt, hopelessly outnumbered, Henry inspires his men with the immortal Band of Brothers speech, a call to unity that still echoes through centuries. Yet Shakespeare also complicates the portrait. The play raises questions. Is Henry's war justified? Does his charisma excuse the bloodshed? Beneath the glory lies unease, making the play as much an examination of power as a celebration of heroism. The character of Falstaff haunts the story. Though absent, his death offstage reminds audiences of the human cost of duty. The laughter of taverns has been replaced by the grim silence of war. Henry V is more than a patriotic chronicle. It is Shakespeare's vision of leadership itself, its triumphs, sacrifices, and contradictions. Performed at the newly built Globe Theatre in Etienne Wubach Chaucer, it secures Shakespeare's place as the preeminent voice of England. At the turn of the century, Shakespeare pens one of his most enchanting comedies, Twelfth Night, c. Etienne Wubach Ling E, Written for the holiday season of revelry, the play captures the spirit of festivity, disguise, and mistaken identity. Shipwrecked on the coast of Illyria, Viola disguises herself as the page Cesario. In this new guise, she enters the service of Duke Orsino, who pines for the Lady Olivia. But Olivia falls in love with Cesario, not knowing Cesario is Viola in disguise. Love triangles entangle. Viola loves Orsino, Orsino longs for Olivia, and Olivia adores Cesario. The play brims with mischief. The clown Feste delivers witty songs, while Sir Toby Belch and Sir Andrew Aguecheek stumble through drunken pranks. Most famously, the pompous steward Malvolio is tricked into believing Olivia loves him. Strutting about in absurd yellow stockings, audiences howl with laughter. Yet beneath the comedy lies tenderness. Viola's disguise allows Shakespeare to explore questions of identity, gender, and desire. Love is portrayed as irrational, painful, and joyous all at once. The final act resolves the chaos. Viola reveals her true self. Orsino embraces her, and harmony is restored. Twelfth Night glitters with poetry and song, laughter and longing. It is a comedy of balance, joy tempered by melancholy, laughter mingled with tears. With it, Shakespeare shows his mastery of both the festive and the profound. Around Iten Lubai to Iten Lubaitling E, Shakespeare writes Hamlet, perhaps the greatest tragedy in world literature. It marks a profound shift in theatre. Tragedy no longer merely depicts outward events, but plunges into the depths of the human mind. The young Prince Hamlet mourns his father's death and is horrified when his mother, Queen Gertrude, hastily marries his uncle Claudius. One night, Hamlet encounters his father's ghost, who reveals he was murdered by Claudius. Hamlet vows revenge, yet hesitation and doubt consume him. The play becomes a study of indecision, grief, and mortality. Hamlet contemplates life and death in the famous to be or not to be soliloquy, wrestling with existence itself. He stages a play to catch the conscience of the king, confirms Claudius's guilt, but still delays. His hesitation destroys those around him. Ophelia, driven mad by grief, drowns. Polonius is stabbed behind a curtain. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern perish abroad. In the final act, Hamlet duels Laertes. Both are mortally wounded. Claudius is killed, Gertrude poisoned, and Hamlet, dying, entrusts his story to Horatio. The rest is silence. Audiences of Shakespeare's day were stunned. Here was tragedy as philosophy, as poetry, as psychology. Hamlet's introspection mirrored their own doubts in a changing world. For us today, it remains a timeless exploration of human uncertainty. Hamlet is not just a play. It is Shakespeare's masterpiece of thought and emotion, a work that has never ceased to define what it means to be human. The success of Hamlet marks a new era. Shakespeare's tragedies are no longer tales of blood and fate alone, but explorations of psychology, morality, and the human condition. The echoes of Hamlet reverberate across his work. In the wake of Hamlet, Shakespeare experiments with plays that blend comedy and tragedy, light and dark. Troilus and Cressida c. Echen Lobylingar presents a cynical view of love and war during the Trojan conflict. Instead of heroic romance, it offers betrayal, lust, and disillusionment. Measure 4, Measure C. Echen Lobylingar turns comedy into moral drama, asking whether justice can coexist with mercy. Audiences are unsettled. These plays do not fit comfortably into categories. They reveal a Shakespeare probing new boundaries, unwilling to repeat old formulas. The laughter is uneasy, the conclusions ambiguous. Critics later call these works problem plays. Neither wholly comic nor tragic, but filled with moral tension. This period also deepens Shakespeare's portraits of women. Isabella in Measure for Measure, Cressida in Troilus and Cressida, and others embody strength, vulnerability, and complexity. Shakespeare explores how power and desire collide, often at the expense of women. After Hamlet, Shakespeare is no longer simply the playwright of England's stage. He is a philosopher of human experience. He dares to ask questions without answers, leaving audiences haunted. Long after the curtain falls, in Ich en Lubitling See, Shakespeare unveils Othello, a tragedy that pierces the heart of love, trust, and destruction. At its center is Othello, a Moorish general serving the Venetian Republic. Brave, noble, and respected, he weds Desdemona, the daughter of a Venetian senator. Their marriage, though genuine and passionate, defies the racial and cultural prejudices of their society. Enter Iago, one of Shakespeare's most chilling villains. Passed over for promotion, he seethes with envy and cunning. Iago hatches a plan. He will convince Othello that Desdemona has been unfaithful. Using lies, insinuations, and a misplaced handkerchief, Iago spins a web of suspicion that ensnares the noble general. As jealousy corrodes Othello's soul, he shifts from loving husband to furious avenger. In a storm of passion, he smothers Desdemona in their bed, only to discover her innocence too late. The truth revealed, Othello stabs himself, dying in grief beside her. Audiences are left stunned. Here is tragedy not of kings and politics, but of intimate betrayal. Shakespeare forces us to witness how love, poisoned by jealousy and manipulation, can turn into monstrous violence. Othello is as relevant today as in the Ich en Lubit's, a portrait of trust, broken, and humanity undone. In Ich en Lubitling Waterloo, Shakespeare writes King Lear, often considered his greatest tragedy. It is a play of cosmic scale, where family betrayal and human folly are magnified into visions of madness and despair. The aged King Lear decides to divide his kingdom among his 3 daughters. He demands declarations of love, but when his youngest, Cordelia, refuses to flatter him, he disowns her. The other daughters, Goneril and Regan, shower him with false praise, only to betray him once they gain power. Lear, stripped of authority and dignity, wanders into a storm, raging at the heavens, descending into madness. Parallel to Lear's downfall is the story of Gloucester and his sons. Edgar, loyal but misunderstood, and Edmund, treacherous and ambitious. Gloucester is blinded, betrayed by Edmund, and saved by Edgar in disguise. The subplot mirrors Lear's tragic blindness to truth. The play crescendos in devastating loss. Cordelia is hanged. Lear dies cradling her body, and the kingdom falls into ruin. King Lear is not just a tragedy of a man, but of the human condition itself. Themes of power, pride, family, and fate intertwine with visions of storm and madness. The play forces audiences to confront mortality, cruelty, and the fragility of love. In Lear's cries on the heath and his broken sobs at Cordelia's death, Shakespeare reaches the rawest depths of human sorrow. In Ich en Lubitling, Shakespeare turns to Scotland for his darkest tragedy, Macbeth, a tale of ambition, prophecy, and blood. It reveals how power corrupts utterly. Macbeth, a Scottish nobleman, encounters 3 witches on a blasted heath. They prophesy that he will be king, consumed by ambition, and urged on by his ruthless wife. Macbeth murders King Duncan in his sleep. With blood on his hands, he seizes the throne, but guilt and paranoia consume him. He sees visions of daggers and Banquo's ghost, driving him deeper into tyranny. Lady Macbeth, once bold, is undone by guilt, sleepwalking, and compulsively washing her hands. "Out, damned spot!" she cries, before her own tragic death. Scotland descends into chaos as Macbeth clings to power through violence. Ultimately, he is slain by Macduff, fulfilling the witch's prophecy that none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. For Macduff was delivered by caesarean birth. Malcolm ascends the throne and the bloody reign ends. Macbeth is a tragedy of vaulting ambition. Its brevity and intensity make it one of Shakespeare's most powerful plays. Through its supernatural visions and psychological depth, it reveals how unchecked desire destroys both soul and state. Audiences leave haunted by witches chanting on the heath, by blood-stained daggers, and by the echo of ambition turned to ruin. In Iten Lobeitling Lutas Chi, Shakespeare turns to ancient Rome and Egypt with Antony and Cleopatra. Unlike the tight, bloody intensity of Macbeth, this play unfolds with grandeur and sensuality, exploring the clash between private passion and public duty. Mark Antony, triumvir of Rome, is torn between his duty to the empire and his love for Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Their affair is intoxicating, filled with desire and indulgence. Cleopatra, witty, proud, and commanding, captivates Antony and bends him from his Roman discipline. Yet their passion makes him vulnerable to his rival, Octavius Caesar. The play moves across vast landscapes, Rome, Egypt, and the seas between, showing a world in transition. Rome represents order, politics, and ambition, while Egypt embodies luxury, passion, and beauty. Antony is caught between these worlds, and his downfall is inevitable. At Actium, Antony's fleet deserts him, and his fortunes collapse. In despair, he falls on his sword. Cleopatra, refusing to be paraded in Rome as a captive, chooses her own death. She takes an asp to her breast, proclaiming herself immortal with Antony. Audiences of Shakespeare's time marveled at the play's scope. Here was not just a tragedy of individuals, but of civilizations. Antony and Cleopatra's love burns with epic force, yet it is doomed by the tides of empire. The play's poetry is lush, sensual, and grand. Cleopatra is one of Shakespeare's greatest creations. Mercurial, brilliant, larger than life. Together with Antony, she embodies both passion's glory and its ruin. 7 years after Shakespeare's death, in Echen Lubeit Arsasan, 2 of his fellow actors, John Heminges and Henry Condell, gather his plays into a monumental volume, the First Folio. Without it, half of Shakespeare's works, including Macbeth, Twelfth Night, and The Tempest, might have been lost forever. Printed in large folio format, usually reserved for Bibles or chronicles, it affirms Shakespeare's stature. The title page bears his likeness, engraved by Martin Droeshout, alongside Ben Jonson's tribute calling him not of an age, but for all time. The book organizes his sans-serif plays into comedies, histories, and tragedies, shaping how the world would read him. For the first time, Shakespeare's art is preserved, not just in fleeting performance, but in enduring print. The First Folio is a labor of love, compiled by friends who saw him as more than a playwright, as a genius whose words must live on. Copies are sold to wealthy patrons and scholars, slowly spreading through Europe and beyond. Today, fewer than Arbeck Wusser's copies survive. Each is priceless, revered as a relic of literary history. They remind us that Shakespeare's immortality depended not only on his pen, but on the devotion of those who ensured his words would outlive him. The First Folio cements Shakespeare's place as the poet of humanity. His characters, once ephemeral on stage, now belong to the ages. Speaking across centuries to every generation, around Echen Lubeiling Shakespeare writes Coriolanus, his last great tragedy. It is stark, political, and unflinching, a story of pride, class conflict, and the volatile power of the people. Caius Marcius, later called Coriolanus, is a Roman general of unmatched valor, fierce in battle. He despises weakness and scorns the common people. After defeating the Volscians at Corioli, he is hailed as a hero, but when he seeks political office, his contempt for the plebeians ignites fury. He refuses to flatter or compromise, declaring his disdain openly. The people, swayed by their tribunes, turn against him. Coriolanus is banished from Rome, his pride too great to bend. In exile, he allies with his old enemy, Aufidius, and marches against Rome itself. Only the intervention of his mother, Volumnia, prevents disaster. She pleads with him not to destroy his homeland. Moved by her words, Coriolanus relents. But in sparing Rome, he seals his fate. Aufidius and the Volscians kill him for betrayal. Coriolanus is a tragedy without softness. There are no witches, no great romances, only politics, pride, and violence. Shakespeare shows how personal arrogance collides with public will, how the voice of the people can both save and destroy. Audiences see Coriolanus as both admirable and detestable, a man of integrity, yet incapable of compromise. In him, Shakespeare captures the fatal flaw of pride and the tragedy of a soldier who cannot be a statesman. Around Etienne Lubide Lingqi Tabar, Shakespeare collaborates on Pericles, Prince of Tyre, a sprawling tale of exile, shipwreck, and miraculous reunion. The play resembles a medieval romance or an ancient epic, echoing Homer and Chaucer. Pericles, fleeing danger at Antioch, sails across the Mediterranean, encountering storms, adventures, and trials. He wins the hand of Thaisa, daughter of King Simonides, but happiness is short-lived. At sea, Thaisa appears to die in childbirth and is cast overboard in a coffin, though she survives. Pericles, broken-hearted, leaves their infant daughter Marina in foster care. Years pass. Marina grows into a young woman of beauty and virtue, but she too suffers trials. Kidnapped by pirates, sold into a brothel, yet remaining pure and uncorrupted. Meanwhile, Pericles wanders in grief, bearded and silent, dressed in rags, a king reduced to despair. At last, father and daughter are reunited in one of Shakespeare's most moving scenes. Marina kneels before him, telling her story. Slowly, recognition dawns, and Pericles embraces her with tears. Soon after, he discovers Thaisa is alive in a temple of Diana, and the family is restored. Pericles may lack the polish of Shakespeare's greatest works, yet its emotional power is undeniable. It is about endurance, the mysteries of fate, and the triumph of love through suffering. The sea itself becomes a character, vast, cruel, and redemptive. Audiences of the time loved its pageantry and miraculous scope. Today, it stands as the first of Shakespeare's great romances, where tragedy yields not to despair, but to renewal. Written around Etienne Lubide Lingqi. Cymbeline is a late romance that blends tragedy, comedy, and fairy tale into a tale of betrayal, exile, and ultimate forgiveness. King Cymbeline of Britain rules uneasily during Roman occupation. His daughter, Imogen, secretly marries the noble but low-born Posthumus. Furious, Cymbeline banishes Posthumus, sending him to Italy. There, Posthumus is deceived into believing Imogen unfaithful. Iachimo, a cunning Italian, wagers that he can seduce her. Though Imogen remains virtuous, Iachimo sneaks into her chamber and steals tokens to convince Posthumus of her betrayal. Consumed by jealousy, Posthumus orders her death. But Imogen, disguised as a boy, escapes into the wilds of Wales. She encounters her long-lost brothers, stolen from the king years before, though she does not know their identity. Meanwhile, war erupts between Rome and Britain. The plot brims with disguises, mistaken identities, and near-tragic turns. In the climactic finale, all is revealed. Imogen is innocent, her brothers restored, posthumous, repentant. Cymbeline, moved, forgives his enemies and embraces reconciliation. Cymbeline captures Shakespeare's late style, full of improbable twists yet suffused with wonder. Themes of jealousy and betrayal recall Othello, but here the ending is redemptive rather than tragic. Forgiveness triumphs over vengeance, reunion over ruin. Audiences see in Cymbeline a reflection of Shakespeare's maturity. After years of exploring ambition and despair, he now envisions harmony, healing, and grace. Written around Echen Lopite Isher Shuri, The Winter's Tale begins as a tragedy of jealousy and ends as a miracle of redemption. King Leontes of Sicilia, consumed by sudden suspicion, believes his wife Hermione has been unfaithful with his friend Polixenes of Bohemia. Blind with rage, he imprisons Hermione, rejects their newborn daughter, and watches Hermione collapse in apparent death after a trial. The infant, Perdita, is abandoned but raised by shepherds. 16 years pass. In Bohemia, Perdita grows into a beautiful maiden, loved by Florizel the prince. Pastoral joy contrasts with Sicilia's earlier darkness. In the final act, Shakespeare delivers one of theatre's greatest miracles. Hermione, long thought dead, is revealed as a statue, which comes to life before all eyes. Leontes falls to his knees in awe, reunited with wife and daughter. The tragedy dissolves into wonder. The Winter's Tale blends darkness and delight, exile and homecoming, sorrow and joy. It is Shakespeare's vision of time's healing power and the possibility of grace. After Ruin, written in Echen Lopite Isher E, The Tempest is often considered Shakespeare's farewell to the stage, a play of magic, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Prospero, the rightful Duke of Milan, lives exiled on a remote island with his daughter Miranda. Using books of magic, he commands the spirit Ariel and rules over the monstrous Caliban. When a ship carrying his usurping brother Antonio and other nobles sails nearby, Prospero conjures a storm, the tempest, wrecking them upon his island. What follows is not vengeance but reconciliation. Miranda falls in love with Ferdinand, son of the King of Naples. Prospero tests the young man's sincerity, then blesses their union. In the end, Prospero forgives his enemies, renounces his magic, and prepares to return to Milan. His final, in Echen Lopite Isher, Shakespeare with John Fletcher stages Henry VIII, a chronicle play dramatizing the reign of Elizabeth I's father. Unlike earlier histories, this play reflects pageantry and spectacle, focusing on court politics and the monarch's marriages. The story follows Henry's desire to annul his marriage to Queen Catherine, leading to England's break with the Pope. Catherine emerges as a figure of dignity and pathos, abandoned but steadfast. Anne Boleyn rises to become queen, while Cardinal Wolsey's political machinations collapse under the king's wrath. The play is remembered less for dramatic brilliance than for its theatrical grandeur. Pageants, coronations, and court scenes dazzle the audience, yet it holds poignant moments, especially Catherine's farewell, where she departs broken but noble. Tragically, during the original performance in Echen Lopite Isher, a cannon fired for stage spectacle set the Globe Theatre ablaze, burning it to the ground. The fire itself became part of the play's history. Henry VIII reflects the Tudor legacy, glorifying the birth of Elizabeth I, while portraying the turmoil of religious and political change. It closes Shakespeare's career in the genre that launched it. English history. By the time of Henry VIII, Shakespeare has written nearly 40 plays. His late romances, The Winter's Tale, The Tempest, Cymbeline, Pericles, mark a new artistic vision. They blend tragedy with comedy, despair with miracle, showing reconciliation as the highest form of drama. Audiences who once saw kings fall and lovers die now witness families reunited. Statues come to life, storms conjured into forgiveness. These plays suggest that Shakespeare, nearing the end of his career, saw beyond ambition and revenge to something gentler. The possibility of renewal. The characters of this period, Perdita, Imogen, Miranda, Prospero, embody endurance, virtue, and reconciliation. They suffer, but suffering is not final. Instead, loss becomes the pathway to joy. Even when tragedy looms, Shakespeare turns toward grace. By Etienne Lobai-Isersan, he retires to Stratford, wealthy and respected. His Globe Theatre burns, yet his words endure. The late romances leave audiences not with despair, but with awe. A sense that human life, though fragile, can end in harmony. These plays complete Shakespeare's circle, from youthful comedies of love, through histories of power and tragedies of ambition, to final works of forgiveness. They are his farewell gift, plays that remind us that, after storms and sorrows, wonder remains. By Etienne Lobai-Isersan. After more than 2 decades dominating the London stage, Shakespeare retires to Stratford-upon-Avon. He is about 68 years old, wealthy from his shares in the Globe Theatre and Blackfriars Theatre, as well as his investments in land and property. Unlike the starving artist myth, Shakespeare leaves the theatre a prosperous gentleman. In Stratford, he lives at New Place, one of the town's grandest houses, alongside his wife Anne Hathaway, his daughters Susanna and Judith, and extended family. Though his son Hamnet had died in childhood, Shakespeare now enjoys the company of grandchildren. He tends to business, manages land, and settles into the role of respected elder. Though retired, his imagination lingers. He likely contributes to collaborations, such as The Two Noble Kinsmen and Cardenio, with John Fletcher. Yet, his creative fire seems at peace. The urgency of London life gives way to the quiet rhythms of Stratford. Here, Shakespeare reflects. He has written of kings and clowns, witches and lovers, villains and heroes. He has shown the heights of ambition and the depths of despair. But in his later years, he embodies the reconciliation found in his romances. Serenity after storm. On April 1, Etienne Lobai-Isersan, his Wutisend birthday, William Shakespeare dies. He is buried at Holy Trinity Church, Stratford, under a stone bearing his epitaph. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. The townspeople mourn, but perhaps few realize that England has just lost its greatest poet. Only later would the world measure the immensity of his gift.